The story of Joseph revolves around food. He's sold by his brothers into Egypt. He's enslaved in Egypt. He is a faithful slave in Egypt, and he's elevated. He's thrown into prison because of a false accusation. He's faithful in prison. He's eventually elevated to the right hand of Pharaoh. But the entire story of his life in Egypt revolves around issues of food. While he's in prison, the cupbearer and the baker that are from the royal court find themselves in prison. Each of them has a dream, and each of them brings that dream to Joseph. The cupbearer has a dream about himself seeing a cluster of grapes, which he squeezes into wine into the cup of Pharaoh. And Joseph interprets that as a prophecy that the cupbearer will be elevated after 3 days. He'll be restored to his position. He'll be restored to that very, very important position as the king's cupbearer. The king has to have a trustworthy cupbearer so that he doesn't get poisoned. The cupbearer is the one who ensures that he's not going to get a poisoned cup. The baker sees that Joseph has interpreted the cupbearer's dream favorably, and so he tells Joseph his dream. But the baker's dream is a much less favorable one. He dreamed of carrying around loaves of bread on his head. He dreamed of birds pecking at the loaves of bread. And Joseph says, well, in 3 days, there are 3 loaves. That represents 3 days. In 3 days, you're going to be elevated, but you're going to be elevated in order to be executed and hanged. And then the birds are going to peck the flesh off of your body. Joseph that eventually leads to Joseph's elevation, because he establishes a reputation as somebody who can interpret dreams, and that reputation is eventually carried over to Pharaoh. But it's not just establishing his reputation as an interpreter, but also showing us, foreshadowing for us, what is going to happen to Joseph himself. Because once Joseph is elevated to Pharaoh's right hand, Joseph becomes Pharaoh's true baker and true cupbearer. Joseph interprets the dreams of Pharaoh, which have to do with bread, which have to do with years of plenty and years of famine. And having interpreted those dreams, he's given this responsibility for carrying out the famine relief program in Egypt. And that famine relief program extends beyond Egypt. Joseph becomes the baker not only for Egypt, he becomes the baker and the bread maker, the bread provider for all the world, including his brothers who come and receive bread from him. We learn later that he also has a cup. He accuses Benjamin. He kind of sets things up so that Benjamin is accused of taking his cup, and he says he has a cup by which he can practice divination. We have Joseph with a loaf of bread. We have Joseph with a cup. Joseph is the baker and the cupbearer for Pharaoh. He's the baker and cupbearer for the world. And Joseph is a type of Christ. Although some readers of the Bible deny this, it's blindingly obvious that Joseph is presented to us as a type of the Messiah. Jesus is the greater Joseph. Jesus is the one who has bread for the world that's offered in the Eucharist. Jesus is the one who has the cup that he offers to the world. Jesus is the one who provides for the world, a hungry world, a world in the midst of famine, a world that needs the food of heaven. Jesus is the greater Joseph who provides that.